There's a region of Antarctica that 48 countries agreed should never be explored. No mining, no military activity, no permanent human presence. It's been off-limits since 1959 under the Antarctic Treaty. But in 2023, climate change melted enough ice that scientists could finally access areas that had been frozen for millions of years. What they found in the ice isn't just scientifically significant, it's genuinely terrifying for reasons that most people don't understand yet. Here are 5 discoveries from Antarctica's forbidden zones that are changing everything we thought we knew about climate. Ancient life and what's buried under 2 miles of ice. 1. Ancient viruses that have been frozen for 15 million years are waking up in November 2023. French researchers published findings in the journal Viruses detailing the discovery of 13 previously unknown viruses extracted from Siberian permafrost and Antarctic ice cores. These aren't modern viruses, they're between 27,000 and 48,500 years old. Some samples from deeper Antarctic cores tested positive for viral DNA dating back 15 million years. Here's what makes this discovery actually terrifying. These ancient viruses remained viable. When researchers thawed samples in controlled lab conditions, the viruses became active again. They infected amoebas within hours. The viruses had been frozen for thousands of years, effectively in suspended animation, and retained the ability to replicate the moment they encountered liquid water and living cells. But here's the part that keeps virologists up at night. Human immune systems have never encountered these pathogens. Modern humans have been around for 300,000 years. Some of these viruses predate our species by millions of years. Our bodies have no evolutionary defenses against them. No genetic resistance. No immune memory. If one of these ancient viruses can infect human cells, the consequences would make COVID look like a minor outbreak. The Antarctic ice sheet is melting at accelerating rates, currently losing 150 billion tons of ice per year according to NASA satellite data. As that ice melts, it's releasing biological material that's been locked away since before humans existed. Scientists have identified over 28 viral families in Antarctic ice samples. Most have never been studied. Many are completely unknown to science. The mathematical problem is simple and horrifying. Antarctica contains ice going back 800,000 years in some regions, and potentially several million years in others. Every layer contains frozen biological material, including bacteria, fungi, and viruses. As the ice melts from climate change, all of that material is being released into liquid water for the first time in epochs. The volume of unknown pathogens being unleashed is impossible to quantify or control. Some scientists argue these ancient viruses likely can't infect humans because they evolved to attack completely different organisms. Maybe they're right. But the 2023 study proved that viruses can remain viable for tens of thousands of years and immediately resume activity upon thawing. Whether they can jump to human hosts is unknown because we've never tested it outside highly controlled lab conditions. And climate change is conducting that experiment at planetary scale right now. 2. Massive underground lakes that shouldn't exist are teeming with unknown life. Lake Vostok is a subglacial lake buried under 2.5 miles of Antarctic ice. It's the size of Lake Ontario, 160 miles long and 30 miles wide. The lake has been sealed off from Earth's atmosphere for 15 million years. In 2012, Russian scientists finally drilled through the ice and extracted water samples from the lake itself. What they found defied everything we thought we knew about life's limits. The water contained over 3,500 unique organisms, not species. Organisms so genetically distinct they couldn't be classified into known categories. Bacteria that use chemical energy instead of sunlight. Microbes that survive in complete darkness under crushing pressure with no external food source. Life that evolved in total isolation for 15 million years and developed completely alien biochemistry. But here's what makes this discovery even more disturbing. Lake Vostok isn't the only one. Ground-penetrating radar has identified over 400 subglacial lakes under the Antarctic ice sheet. Many are connected by underground river systems that span hundreds of miles. Some of these lakes are even older than Vostok, some are larger, and we've only sampled one of them. In 2018, scientists drilling into the Mercer subglacial lake found living organisms 3,500 feet below the ice, in water that hasn't seen sunlight in 100,000 years. DNA analysis revealed bacterial species that exist nowhere else on Earth. They're not related to surface bacteria. They're not even related to deep-sea bacteria. They represent entirely separate evolutionary lineages that diverged millions of years ago and developed in complete isolation. The implications are staggering. If life can exist in these conditions, buried miles under ice with no sunlight and minimal nutrients, it changes our understanding of where life can survive. But more immediately concerning is what happens when these isolated ecosystems are exposed to the surface world. These organisms have been evolving separately from Earth's surface biosphere for millions of years. They may carry genetic material, produce chemicals, or host pathogens that surface life has no defenses against. And they're being exposed right now. A 2022 study published in Nature found that Antarctic ice melt is creating new surface lakes at accelerating rates. Some of these surface lakes are drilling natural channels through the ice, connecting to subglacial lakes below. Water from isolated underground ecosystems is mixing with surface water for the first time in millions of years. We have no idea what biological material is being released or what it might do in surface ecosystems. 3. Perfectly preserved forest ecosystems. From before Antarctica froze, scientists exploring the transantarctic mountains discovered something that shouldn't exist: perfectly preserved tree roots, branches, and leaf fossils from a forest that thrived 280 million years ago during the Permian period. But these weren't just fossils. In some cases, the organic material was so well preserved that cellular structures were still intact. Here's why this discovery is significant beyond paleontology. Antarctica wasn't always frozen. Between 35 and 55 million years ago, the continent had temperate rainforests similar to modern New Zealand. When the ice sheets formed, they buried everything. Antarctic ice essentially freeze-dried these ecosystems. They're preserved in a state more similar to mummification than traditional fossilization. The 2017 discovery found leaf tissue so well preserved that chloroplasts were still visible under microscopes. Tree rings showed growth patterns indicating the climate 280 million years ago. But more concerning, they found pollen grains and spores still containing intact DNA fragments. Not full genomes, but genetic material that hadn't completely degraded despite being frozen for hundreds of millions of years. But here's what keeps biologists concerned. If plant genetic material can survive this long in Antarctic ice, what else can survive? We know viruses and bacteria remain viable for tens of thousands of years in permafrost. These forest discoveries suggest that preservation in Antarctic ice might maintain biological material for exponentially longer periods. We might be dealing with organisms that have been dormant for not thousands but millions of years. And as the ice melts from climate change, these preserved ecosystems are being exposed. A 2023 study documented accelerated melting in the transantarctic mountains, revealing coastal areas that haven't been ice-free in 14 million years. Whatever biological material was buried when that ice formed is now being exposed to liquid water, atmospheric oxygen, and microbial life for the first time in epochs. 4. Strange magnetic anomalies that defy geological explanation. In 2001, Count satellites mapping Earth's magnetic field detected a massive anomaly in East Antarctica under the ice sheet. The area is roughly the size of Ohio and shows magnetic readings that don't match any known geological formation. The anomaly was named the Wilkes Land Magnetic Anomaly, and scientists still can't explain it. Here's what makes this anomaly genuinely strange. The magnetic signature suggests a massive concentration of metal buried under 1.2 miles of ice. But the readings don't match any known mineral deposit patterns. The anomaly is too circular, too consistent, and too concentrated to be a natural geological formation. Ground-penetrating radar shows what appears to be a 300-mile-wide circular structure buried in the ice. Some scientists theorize it's the remnant of a massive asteroid impact from 250 million years ago during the Permian-Triassic extinction event that killed 96% of all marine species. The impact crater theory would explain the circular shape and metallic concentration. But there's a problem. Impact craters create specific shock patterns in surrounding rock. The Wilkes Land Formation doesn't show those patterns, but here's where it gets weird. In 2018, researchers mapping the anomaly with more advanced equipment found something unexpected. The magnetic field fluctuates, not randomly, but in patterns that suggest the source isn't just metallic debris. It's electromagnetically active. This means either there's volcanic activity under the ice, which would show up in seismic data, and doesn't, or something else is generating electromagnetic fields. The Antarctic Treaty prohibits extensive drilling in this region, so direct exploration is legally impossible. We're limited to remote sensing, which can't penetrate deep enough through the ice to identify what's creating the magnetic signature. Satellite data shows the anomaly extends at least 500 meters below the ice rock boundary, meaning, whatever it is, it's huge. Climate change is now exposing areas around the anomaly's edges. As ice melts, we might finally get surface access to study what's been buried there for millions of years. Some scientists are excited about solving a geological mystery. Others are concerned about disturbing something that's been isolated for 250 million years. Blood falls and the iron-breathing bacteria that could exist on other planets. Blood falls is exactly what it sounds like. A 5-story waterfall of blood-red water pouring out of the Taylor Glacier in Antarctica's McMurdo Dry valleys. The water is red because it contains massive amounts of iron oxide, but the iron isn't the interesting part. What lives in that water is. In 2009, microbiologist Jill McCookie analyzed water samples from blood falls and discovered bacteria living in conditions that shouldn't support life. The water is 3 times saltier than seawater. It's below freezing but remains liquid due to salt concentration. It contains no oxygen. It's been isolated from Earth's atmosphere for over 1.5 million years, and it's teeming with bacterial life. Here's what makes these bacteria extraordinary. They don't use oxygen. They breathe iron. Specifically, they use ferric iron as an electron acceptor in their metabolism, the way surface organisms use oxygen. They've been doing this in complete isolation for over 1 million years, creating an entire ecosystem based on chemistry that's completely alien to surface life. But here's why this discovery terrifies astrobiologists. If life can exist in these conditions on Earth, it can probably exist in similar conditions elsewhere in the solar system. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, has a subsurface ocean beneath miles of ice with similar chemistry to blood falls. Enceladus, Saturn's moon, has subsurface oceans with even higher salinity. These bacteria prove that isolated, frozen, oxygen-free environments can sustain complex ecosystems. The concerning implication is this. If life developed independently in Antarctica's subglacial lakes and survives in conditions this extreme, it probably developed independently in similar environments throughout the solar system. And if that's true, Earth's biosphere might soon encounter life forms from Antarctica's isolated ecosystems that are biochemically alien despite evolving on the same planet. A 2021 study found that ice melt from Taylor Glacier is accelerating, and blood falls flow has increased by 40% over the past decade. The isolated ecosystem that's been sealed for 1.5 million years is increasingly being exposed to surface conditions. The bacteria that evolved in complete isolation are now encountering surface microbes, atmospheric oxygen, and temperature fluctuations they've never experienced. We have no idea how this forced mixing of isolated and surface ecosystems will affect either system. Here's the pattern across all 5 discoveries. Antarctica, preserved ecosystems, organisms, and biological material in frozen isolation for millions of years. Climate change is now melting that ice at unprecedented rates. Everything that's been locked away is being released simultaneously. And we have no idea what the consequences will be, because most of these organisms and ecosystems have never been studied. The Antarctic ice sheet contains ice going back 800,000 years in continuous records and potentially several million years in deeper layers. Every layer contains frozen biological material. As it melts, that material is being exposed to liquid water, atmospheric conditions, and surface ecosystems for the first time in epochs. The rate of exposure is accelerating faster than our ability to study what's being released. Ancient viruses that predate human evolution are waking up. Underground lakes teeming with unknown life are connecting to surface water. Preserved ecosystems from millions of years ago are being exposed. Unexplained geological formations are being revealed. Extremophile bacteria that breathe iron instead of oxygen are mixing with surface microbes. All of this is happening simultaneously across the continent. But here's what makes this situation genuinely terrifying. The Antarctic Treaty prevents extensive exploration and restricts research activities to minimize environmental impact. This means we're watching these isolated ecosystems get exposed in real time while being legally prohibited from thoroughly studying them before they mix with surface life. By the time we fully understand what was buried in Antarctic ice, it will already be released into the environment. Most people think about climate change in terms of sea level rise, extreme weather, and temperature increases. Those are significant problems. But the biological consequences of melting Antarctic ice might be far more unpredictable and potentially more dangerous. We're conducting a planetary-scale experiment in mixing isolated and surface ecosystems that have been separated for millions of years. And unlike controlled scientific experiments, we can't stop this one or contain the results if something goes wrong. The discoveries from Antarctica's forbidden zones aren't just fascinating science. They're warning signs that we're releasing things we don't understand and can't control. And the rate of release is accelerating every year as temperatures rise and ice continues melting. What scientists are finding terrifies them, not because it's mysterious, but because it's becoming less mysterious, just as it's too late to do anything about it.